Finance from ABSA. Today, tomorrow, together.
Go!
The final event of the 8-race-long series in the ABSA Off-Road Championship was the 2006 Ford Carnival City 400, and it was a showdown and a shower down of note. This race somehow aggravates the rain gods, and all without as much as one dance step. The heavens traditionally open on this one and therefore makes things very interesting indeed. The gambling complex, the biggest on the East Rand, however, is always decked up in its finest for the final stopover on the national off-road calendar. And the already colourful livery of the complex was livened up even more as the 86 cars were driven to the compound to get those vital last-minute settings, tyre inflations, and the all-important sponsors branding down. Even though the overall production car championship and the special vehicle category had been settled and was firmly back in the hands of Hannes Grobler and Alfie Cox respectively after the previous round in the Toyota Dealer 400 in Leidenburg, there was a lot to race for. The prestigious manufacturer's trophy was still up for grabs after Nissan had closed the gap significantly on points leader Toyota and Mpumalanga, and there were several other big battles on the cards. As for the motorized crew, they had their beady eye on an unprecedented 1-2-3 in the special vehicle category in the overall championship, a feat that no other team had achieved before, but they would not have it all their own way. And the weather in and around Brakpan was looking ominous before the start of the 40-kilometer-long prologue. In the production vehicles, it looked like this, with Grobler and his co-driver Francois Jordan enjoying a 24-point lead. But crews are asked to drop one event's points from the season when the racing is completed, and that left the three-time champ Grobler with the title in the bag. In the manufacturer's title race, Nissan were exactly 20 points in arrears, thanks largely to the Toyota privateers going well beyond the call of duty. At the top of the open cockpit vehicle category, motorbike supremo Alfie Cox added national title number 26 to his CV, with teammates Brandon Harkis and Evan Hutchinson second and third. At the start of the 40k long prologue, which would determine start times the next day for the two loops of the 180 kilometers each, drivers, navigators, team managers and mechanics knew that the incessant rain that had soaked the entire Highveld in the preceding week would be the deciding factor, forcing some teams to race differently to their normal style. But no one told Duncan Voss and Ralph Pitchford that. For them, it was water bombs away. For Neil Woolridge and Kenny Scholthammer and the big Ford Ranger, there was still the small matter of the new SP class, which they were leading ahead of Grobler and Jordan due to the vagaries of the point system. Whatever the case may have been, Jacques Cousteau would have felt extremely happy in these conditions. The second proudly South African Nissan Navara with two more SA champs brand new as it was, Hannes Grobler and Francois Jordan aboard, sitting pretty. They were backing up Voss in their stable. For the Toyota Works team of Mark Grenier and Chris Birkin and the Toyota 4-litre Hilux, it's been a season to forget, starting off with a few no-shows in the year and ending with a little to write home about. And for their teammates Bev and Berthold and his navigator Robin Houghton, it's also been a quiet year. They had one more tilted winning and breaking the Toyota victory duck. Ditto for Rob Gurney and Graham Steinbach, who in their Ford Ranger had 3 non-finishes out of the 7 races that had been contested in the year 2006. However, their teammates Manfred Schroeder and Ward Huxtable had clinched the Class E National Championship, but Schroeder had to sit this one out due to a broken collarbone after his exploits on his son's quad bike ended in disaster. But the waterlogged countryside on the western outskirts of the East Rand was tough to negotiate on 4 wheels, whether it was the production cars or the specials. Even a scrambler would have been hard-pressed in these conditions, actually. That's Cliff and Louis Weichelt spinning to a grinding halt. But father and son Hicho and Jaap de Bruin had no such problems and stormed home to lead the Class D contingent in the 19th place overall. Clearly, the conditions were slightly more suited to the space frame vehicles, which could negotiate the mud and the H2O a little easier. For Motorrad team manager Evan Hutchison and his co Kim Bergman, there's only one speed, full tilt ahead. And by the way, remember that there's no windscreen here. This is a continuous shower. For the Atlas Copco crew, Gary Bertolt and Henry Costain, there was bad news as they had just been told of their relegation to third place after their provisional win in the Toyota Dealer 400. Cox and Testeja and Hutchison and Bergman were placed ahead of the duo after they'd left the designated service point too early. They had a lot to prove. Horse racing pundits would have called it heavy going, and it was. Harkus, the overall winner of the Western Cape race in Darling in car with Marcel Trethouille, had all his days trying to control that 6-litre bat and got it to listen to him long enough to take 8th place, 2 minutes and 11 seconds down. Colin Matthews and Bodo Bertel piloted their green Gondwana Steel back to a respectable 10th place overall with some steely driving. While Cox and Testeja just did what they normally did, fly along at breakneck pace. The Red Rapsa bat of Nardis Alberts and Colin Hunter was just less than 2 minutes down at the line, and they also found it hard going out there. Engines were hard pressed, what with all this wheel spinning going on. Gerard and Kobe du Plessis Hitachi Jimco surprised all and sundry with a blistering 32-minute, 32-second clocking, which left them 4th in class. There was very little place to choose where it was dry, or at least drier. Here are Nassau Mobile Racing's Terence Marsh and Michael Whitehouse, who sent spectators scurrying for a safer and drier vantage point. With Shamir Variawa and VZ Van Sail with a massive 7-litre Porter in the colours of Total Motorsport behind them, but on their way to a 7th place overall. Father and son Gareth and Rob Walk in the Super Pave Bat had one of their better prologues and clinched the 9th place overall. While the absolute bat of Clint Gibson and Mike Brown was very solid in these exacting conditions. The Chevy engine of John Moore and Ashley Thorne and the Leo Connex Internet Free Spirit sounded great as it hurried to a 10th place in Class A. They were to have their best outing of the year. With the rain harder than ever, the veteran Richard Schilling and his nav Chris Davies had their one eye on the road and the other on the championship. They needed a good finish to clinch the Class S crown. But they would be chased all the way by Archie Rutherford and Craig Doubtfire combination in the second National Mobile Race Go. With just a few points separating them and Nick Gosler in the Kopenhagen entry, there was going to be a lot to play for. In Class B, it was Marcus Taylor and Mark de Chalane who were setting the pace in their JRE, with a double track resembling a little river. SA champions Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst were the biggest casualties of the prologue. They had mechanical problems and they took maximum penalties after failing to get to the line. In a continuous spray of muddy rainwater, the Raysonics Nissan crew Kutsia Labaskachny and Johan Gerber also disappointed and finished 50th overall, 16 minutes down in class. And in the single-seaters, young Brett Gurney took his Sandmaster to 36th place overall and 4th in Class B, a fine drive. For Naim Mosaji and Rehan Bodiano, it was a good day at the office and they were in 13th place in the A-class. For the BB auto pairing of Arnold du Plessis and Johan Knox in the 3.3-litre Nissan diesel, there was a 3rd place in class, but they were 7 minutes down, quite a margin to give away at the beginning of the next day. Blanco Bat Stable, Bez Besaidnout and Johan de Bruin kept the flag flying in 25th place overall, just 52 seconds behind the Class B leader, Taylor and de Chalane. There were no less than 4 crews in with a title shot here. Just a further 2.5 minutes back, the Century Properties development spat of Ernest Corbett and Warwick Goosen were steady as she goes. Championship glints in their eye too, but sometimes the job required diving goggles.
Is it not obvious to see?
I don't think you must ask her.
This is not amphibious.
You can see we play like kids. Ridiculous. Oh?
The lads were getting stuck like fat gets stuck in deep-fried chicken, and there were many who tried the exercise. Some got through, though, on mercy and a lot of luck. Others looked like old LPs on a turntable. They just kept spinning. But with the right pace, weight distribution and clever steering, it could be done. And as the old Beatles song goes, with a little help from my friends, it's finally out and on the way again. The Swaziland crew of John Thompson and Clint McNamara were very positive on entry in this quagmire, but they also got bogged down, getting the back axle packed with mud right past the last bolt in the process. At DSP, there was a sigh of relief as cars eventually got back, but 11 of them never got to savor that experience. The mud was so severe.
We've pulled the time trial, so we'll be leaving first. I don't know how much of an advantage it's going to be tomorrow because it's very muddy and slippery out there. And as we speak again, the rain is coming down, so it's going to be very trying conditions tomorrow. We've pulled it once or twice this year, and it's difficult to run from the front. The marking today didn't seem too bad, so hopefully the marking's good tomorrow. They'll be able to keep us in the front. But I think the winner of tomorrow's race is going to be the guy who has the least amount of mistakes and has a little bit of luck on his side. But we'll wait to see the confirmation on the time trial times. But I've got Alfie 2 positions behind me. Yeah, we just have to see what tomorrow brings. But it's definitely going to be a tough day. It's definitely going to be tough, and it's definitely going to be wet and muddy.
And after that appeal court decision, the battle lines had been drawn.
Yeah, I think we seem to be okay. Evan got us by about 15 seconds, and Alfie is about 25 seconds behind us, so we're in between the two. A lot of rain, very wet event. I think tomorrow's going to be the luck of the draw. By the time the guys get to those big mud patches, it's going to be a very tough day tomorrow in all that mud.
And as they say, good weather for ducks. Alfie, in the meantime, was ducking the pressure.
Yeah, well, having won the championship already, coming to this race, I've got no pressure. But every time I get in this motorized bat, it's just so much fun. But it is perfect position where I am, and a bit of controversy. Gary made a mistake at the last race. He was penalized for it. He believed he had won. So I think tomorrow we've got to go out and show Gary that we can do it. So tomorrow I think it's war between the Atlas Copter vehicle of Gary Berthold. And then, I'm going to try and help Evan to come second in the championship. So we got 1, 2, 3.
All mapped out for Motorite, but how were things in the rest of the camps? Upbeat and grafting at Ford's enclosure. The Toyota boys were rehydrating, and at Nissan, it was conservative.
We were first on the road, so maybe we were a bit conservative. We not battled, but we had to find the route in certain sections, and I think that maybe cost us a bit of time. But we had a good time trial. We second out of the production cars, which is a good place to start in. And we're amongst the space frames tomorrow, so there's going to be a great race between the first sort of 15 cars. But the Toyota's ahead of us, starting ahead of us tomorrow, so obviously we'll find our feet in the first couple of Ks and then try and chase him down.
But the top prize was still uppermost in the racing minds.
We definitely have to go for the manufacturer's award on this race. It's a close competition in between Nissan and Toyota, and we're going to try and win it for Nissan. And we've also got the class championship still that's a little bit it's open in between us and the Ford. So we just need to finish in any case to win that as well.
And what about the weather predictions?
Well, looking at the sky at the moment, it's looking ominous. I think it might be a rain suit and yeah, just a little bit of survival out there and see whether you can bring it home. If it stays dry, I think it could turn into a really nice event. I think it could turn into something where it could turn into a bit of a dogfight. I think it's going to be the fastest car will win here tomorrow, because if this place dries up, it's going to be a hammer and tong battle between the boys out front, without any doubt.
So clearly everyone knew where they stood with just 360 k's worth of racing left in the 2006 season. A 50-second victory for the Toyota Dio, with the two Nissans which were destined to follow in their tracks in the wet. Woolwich and Schultheimer were almost 2 minutes down. In the special vehicle category, there was only 12 ticks of the clock in it, with the Atlas Copco team sandwiched by the Motorride crews and a lot of needle in the first 30 seconds up there. Harkes took 7th place for his team very neatly. The Ford Carnival City 400 continues.
Vehicle and asset finance from ABSA. Going off the beaten track. Finance from ABSA. Going the extra mile to get you financed.
As the cars were prepared to go to war one final time in 2006, with two tough loops of 180 kilometers ahead of them, and their pilots and most of the national crowns still up for grabs, everyone knew that it would be a tough day. The prescribed order of things: mud, mud, and more mud.
Time trial was very slippery and wet. It was, we had a whole lot of rain just before the time trial, and but in saying that, I think a lot of the other competitors had a lot worse than us. We just finished our time trial and the rain really poured down, so it's a shame. Some of the back markers really battled. It wasn't terrible. There was one huge big mud flay, which I think I hesitated a bit going into it, and we just made it out. But other than that, it was plain sailing, no problem. The car was 100%. We didn't set the world alight with our time trial time. But we knew that today's a long 400 k's. It's going to be very wet out there. We're going to lots of rocky areas up near the military base. So I think the idea was to put up a fair time, which we did yesterday, and then today will be the day that we'll attack.
And attack they would. What with the SP title still up in the air between the Ford Dio and Krobler and Jordan in the Nissan. For Toyota's Grenier, Brakpan was all or nothing.
Yeah, we had a really good run yesterday in the time trial. We pushed really hard and just wanted a result for the team. I mean, they've been working very hard on the car, and we really needed to put it together for them. So fortunately, it came together quite nicely.
And now that they had a gap ahead of the production car field, what would the top Toyota team's strategy be?
Our strategy really is just to get it to the end, because this is quite a hectic event, and I think it's going to be very tough. The vehicles take a lot of punishment, but the cars have put a good package together, so I think we'll be okay.
And the windscreen wipers and motors would have had to have been the toughest of the whole lot. For Shamir Varayawa, it had been a frustrating year. He debuted in the Total Ford SP class, but after a handful of races, decided to go back to the space frame vehicles. The prologue in Brakpan was a matter of it being the same old, there or thereabouts, but not quite.
Yesterday we had a nice clean run, except for about, I would say about 7-8 kilometers where we got caught up behind Terence Marsh, and that brought our time a bit down, but nevertheless we still qualified 7th overall, and today it looks like a good day. The weather turned out to be better than yesterday, no rain, so it'll be a great racing day today.
For the De Bruins and their Toyota, it had also been a frustrating start to the 06 season.
Unfortunately, the first two races we had a mishap. We battled with the gearbox of the bakkie. The first race in Cape Town, the gearbox went. The second race in the Sugar Belt, the gearbox went. But we managed to sort it out. Mark from Toyota helped us a lot with the gearbox. And after that, everything has been running well for us. The last two races we won in class, and hopefully it will continue today. Luckily we started yesterday in a good starting position, which helped us a lot due to the rain that the other guys that started late had on the way. So we're very lucky to start in this position today, and we try to calculate it from it.
Stand-in driver Jack Beckham in the Ford Ranger had a good prologue and a 6.5-minute winning margin.
Yeah, we had it's good to be back. Unfortunately, Munford, he's hurt broken his collarbone, so I've managed to get a chance to drive, and yeah, we had a good day yesterday. I think we just take it easy today and just take it from there.
The drivers and their pathfinders were happy to meet in glorious sunshine, but would it stay that way?
Yeah, I must say that the chips really did come down yesterday. We hit that rain full on, and it was tough. It was really tough. At times we were like crawling, but well, we got through. I'm very pleased that we're starting first in Class S. I'm not quite sure where Nick is starting. The deal is we've got to win. He can't do better than fourth. Well, aim today, finish, win the race, and let the rest happen the way it's going to happen. It's great. The sun's shining, so we're going to have a good day.
For Hutchison and Bergman, there was another aim. They needed to ensure a 1-2-3 for the Motorride team, and they were determined.
Well, we've managed to put on pole position off the time trial in very tricky conditions, so I think we've definitely got the pace to win today. We've got Gary 15 seconds behind us, which is we're definitely feeling the pressure there. So it's a long way, and it's going to be a tough race. So we're going to push as hard as we can. We're going to stay in the front. If we do make some navigational errors, obviously Gary will be he'll be right there and he'll take over. And I expect that we're going to swap the lead a few times through the course of the day. We just hope to be there at the end of the day in the front. We've got nothing to lose. We're definitely going to give it a full go. The sun's come out. We're expecting rain today. So yeah, spirits are high. We definitely want to try and bring this Motorride team home first, second and third today.
Fighting talk and all the spoils of victory were just 2 loops of 180 k's away, and unbeknownst to the drivers, a lot of litres of water too. Carnival City, the drivers and the clouds were ready. Go! The 2005 SA Champion Class B, Hutchison speared his Motorride 6-litre bat away from the start line with barely contained aggression. And with a big crowd outlining the first kilometres or so, they were on their way to what was, at first, a dry start. But they knew that the big yellow Atlas Copco Porter would be all over their backside in a flash if they'd make the slightest mistake. Berthold and Costain were ready to take them down. With Cox and Versteger riding shotgun and keeping a vigil just 18 seconds back. Cronje and Birken, who astounded friend and foe by being the only production car in the top 10 in the prologue in fourth, was next off. With the wet patches from the previous day's deluge still affecting the handling of the cars, Cronje and Birken have a great understanding, with Birken's calm attitude keeping a check on his young driver.
It's 200 left. 100 left. Now go through the bunching, sorry. Go through the bunching. Watch the ditch. I just turn off. Watch the ditch. Yeah. Turn left. Turn left. Let him go, Mark. Let him go. Left.
Meanwhile, Hankus and his navigator Marcel Truthui were piling on the speed and therefore the pressure as they'd caught and passed the 4 cars ahead of them. They'd started off like a missile. And for the first few Ks, the crews were enjoying a dust-free and water-free ride. But would it last, they all wondered. All season long they'd been plagued by the drought and thus the relentless dust. Now at the end of the season, the ideal weather to race in. Yawa made her dance over the jump, while Alberts and Hunter dropped a place in a cautious start. Voss and Pitchford were the next production car and were going at it hammer and tongs and through the notorious mine dumps of the East Rand on a new and improved route that the organisers, the Koppel Club, had hoped would draw spectators, and it had. With racing such as this, it was really easy to see why. Matthews and Berthold Sr. had given away their 10th place to Voss and were clearly not happy about it.
Pick it up now, pick it up.
With four-time champion Grobler and Jordan, a two-time champion hot pursuit, they were celebrating already as they had brought Nissan its 11th National Motorsport Championship in a row. While Woolridge and Schulthammer were just 44 seconds behind the proudly South African Nissan Navara in their Ford SP. Meanwhile, Bevan Bertolt and Robin Houghton in their Toyota were in turn just 90-odd seconds behind them. And Gurney and Steinbank were just 22 seconds off their tracks. It was an SP class match made in heaven. But something had to give, and it did. As the Ford SP Ranger ranged by, it was clear that the Nissan had broken quite badly. Foss and 05 Navigators champ Pitchford were out as they fractured a steering arm and drive shaft, the end of the road after a very promising start too. Number A13 proved to be a lucky one for John Moore and Ashley Thorne as they bust loose early on and made good time, and the Leo Connick's internet entry. Our old friends and world record holder for 21 consecutive finishes, Henry and Maurice Matten, the brothers, were also back, but they wouldn't get to the finish line either. But in true off-road fashion, they showed great sportsmanship. Ironically, they wouldn't see the line. At the front, things had hotted up even more. It was Hutchison and Bergman with the yellow Atlas Copco all over their exhausts. And watching closely, their Motorride teammates Cox and Tersteger. It was tough for the lead vehicle, which was showing everyone else the way. Harkes and Trathui had driven like possessed demons, and they were also trying to cut in on the action. And it was still pretty wet out there. Watch the hand windscreen wiper action bottom right. Gary Bertolt and Henry Costain were finally passed, but would they stay there? The Total Porter's 7-litre engine growled along under the hands of former champion Variawa, and it was looking good for them in the top 7. But they too would end up on an ever-increasing casualty list. The Castrol Toyota team, though, was still sitting pretty, but Gareth Walk, who shares the driving duties, were all over the back of the bakkie. For Grenier and Birkin, it wasn't long before the special stormed by, but the veteran Birkin was steady as ever.
We keep going straight, a little bit left, then right, over the road. Straight. We join where the time trial was. Left over here. We have to start the time trial now. Watch the log on the left here.
Grobler and Jordan were enjoying the fruits of their labours and were, as always, steady and, of course, fast. Woolridge and Schulthammer had stuck with their stated race plan and were impressive in the big Ford Ranger. They were in the hunt and holding station for the meanwhile. The many jumps and bumps on the new and improved route seemed to suit some crews more than others. One such a crew was without doubt Bevan Bertolt and his nav Robin Houghton in their Toyota Hilux. In fact, they positively reveled in the conditions. Gurney and Steinbach in the second Ford SP Ranger were also edging their way into the top 12 and had decided to try and keep it steady. The Weeping Willows stood guard as Harkis rushed by like the wind. The son of motor racing legend, the late Arthur Harkis, he proved that the apple did not fall far from the tree. He'd taken the lead. And he was closely followed by his motorite teammate Alfie Cox. The husband and wife team of the Duplessis, Gerard and Kobe, were also still holding station in the top 7, their best performance of the season. And the outgoing Class A champions Marsh and Whitehouse were finally showing some of the steady form that took them to the championship last year. Their 5.7 bat was sounding phenomenal. But the big movers and groovers on the first lap were Bertolt and Houghton, who were flying up the order from 14th into the top 10 and still climbing. While two more former champions, Neil Woolridge and Kenny Scholthammer, who was also a bike ace in his time, had worked their way into the top 10 as well. The end of the road for the Walks came, though, when they had mechanical trouble and could not get the bat going again, while the rest of the field whipped by in quick succession. It may have been dry early on at the start, but out on the taxing route, there was still plenty of casual water. And unlike golf, in this game, there's no dropping away from it. It's right through you go, sir. Alberts and Hunter in hot pursuit in their big-sounding Rapsa bat. The well-marked route also contributed to some of the finest racing of the season, but by now the rain had started sifting down again, affecting visibility for the specials. Ron Bailey and Warren Manthe in their roost bat sped by the stricken Superpave bat of the Walks, while Rutherford and Doubtfire looked like they were caught in a popcorn machine. With the Class E champions car Schroeder's 2.5 Ford Ranger being piloted by Jack Peckham doing its usual thing. And the Class D battle for second place in the championship had got warm, with the father and son combination of Hichu and Jaap de Bruin jetting up the order, looking for second on the log and up 5 places overall. The other father and son combination, Jan and Hendrik Kraai, had won in the Limpopo 400, but also had 2 consecutive non-finishes. But here on the East Rand, they were going well. Their biggest competition for the national title was Ernest Corbett and his co-driver Warwick Goosen, who had the best form of all in the Class B combinations in the latter part of the season. While the BB Auto Nissan entry with Arnold Duplessis and Johan Knox were looking to put an end to a string of 7 consecutive Toyota victories in Class D, they were on their way to achieving exactly that. In Class E, the Moffat brothers, Mark and Stewart, were hoping to notch up a second in the championship behind champion Schroeder, who had his win cemented 4 weeks earlier in Leidenburg. With the pecking order in Class E firmly established as the Baden Tyre Services Nissan of Thomas Rondler and Brian Roberts was in second place. The Johan Ferreira-Nico Kotze combination in the Nissan was going well, but they were being screamed at by Brett Gurney in the single-seater. And just behind them, Nick Gosler and Richard Carolyn were trying to make up lost time from a less-than-ideal prologue. Gosler and Richard Carolyn were locked in mortal combat for the Class S national crown. The Weichelts, Cliff and Louis in the Bosel Toyota also did not enjoy the prologue, but from these in-car pictures you can tell it was a rough ride. And it was from the outside too. A remarkably clean Ray Sonics Nissan with Kutsia Labaskachny and Johan Gerber aboard appeared next, but they too would become a retired statistic in this one. Back at the designated service point after 180 Ks, there was sunshine, and not just weather-wise. It was a sunshiny day for Alfie Cox and Henny Tersteger, who got there first. They were closely followed by Brandon Harkis, who nailed some big ones on the way in.
Yeah, and I started 8th this morning, and before that time trial route was 40 k's, I was in front. I was really pushing hard this morning, and it just got a little bit too wet out there, and I'm struggling a little bit. The rear mount car's a little bit like a pendulum at the back, but I've been having a great race with Alfie. When I was in front, he was able to stick with me, and then when he got past, he was very good in the very thick water sections. And then, like I say, when he was in front, and they found the road, then they don't find the road, and then we got back in front, and then, you know, just coming into the stadium section was really confusing here, and he pipped me right in to get in here. But I think the next 180 k's is going to be really tough, because I'm not going to back off, and neither is he. So, but bearing in mind, we have to keep a 1-2 for motor out, so it's going to be a great lap.
All for one and one for all in the motorride camp. For the Duplessis, there was a rather wind-up park maneuver at the end of lap 1. While Berthold and Houghton made Toyota Heightspeed custard with their showing in 4th place after starting 14th. A big leap up the overall standings and also leading the production cars after the first loop. Berthold was one very happy camper.
Past the Ford now on the way in here, having a very good race with him. Navigator's very good. Saw the distance broke. It was huge ditches. It was called triple caution, both them, bang bang. So we're quite happy, and Toyota's strong. And my factory's building this car right. So they've done a good job. Just want to finish now, doesn't matter where.
In the Ford camp, there were a few small repair jobs to be done, and then, of course, the all-important job of pumping the juice. Woolridge was battling with the H2O.
First 40 k's was wet, but not too bad, and then we've just been through a thunderstorm that just made it almost impossible. It's like an ice rink. You just battle even just to keep the car in a straight line, all the way right through till about 20 kilometers from the end, where it's suddenly dry again. So very, very difficult to keep the car in a straight line and just make sure everything's right. But no problem. We had a puncture this morning. I don't know. I think a wheel just debeaded or something like that. But yeah, otherwise no problems.
For Terence Marsh, it was a nightmare on wet street.
Trying. Treacherous conditions, it's an absolute nightmare out there. But a lap to go, we'll just have to keep trying. But it's getting worse, it's not getting better. That's the worst thing. It's dry, yeah, but out in the route, it's ridiculous.
While drivers wet to the bone and as dirty to boot were looking to dry off, others were trying to limit the damage. Hutchison was almost lost for words.
Yeah, horrendous. It's pouring with rain. There's some sections we couldn't get through. Our fan belt tensioner broke off this morning, so we had to jump out and try and fix that. We managed to get going, but we must have lost 15 or 20 minutes. So we've been battling, trying to pass cars in the rain and the mud, and yeah, it's hard work out there. It's very, very hard work. But we've got one lap to go. We're going to fight for our positions in the last lap.
And then it really came down. DSP became a veritable river, and there was hardly a dry place about. The pop group Wet would have had a fine time here. For the De Bruins, a wrong tyre choice cost them dearly.
As much as it's raining, about 10 k's from here, we're in the dust front of Jack, and we battled to get through him, but unfortunately we've made the wrong tyre choice today, so we battled, but we'll take it a second around a lot slower and see if we can make it.
For the Century Properties Development team's Ernest Corbett and his co-driver Warwick Goosen, there wasn't a spot close enough to their dry and warm race van, and they got as close as they could. As for the self-confessed old man of the circus, he wanted to be someplace else, preferably surrounded by lots of warm water.
Now, this is what you call an obstacle course of immense proportions. I'd actually rather be home in a hot bath right now. It's unbelievable. It's actually almost impossible. If it wasn't for my navigator telling me to go on, I might have stopped.
And the flats on the back of Brian Martin's Toyota told you another story. It was tough.
Very, very wet and sloshy. Very rough and stages. Very rocky. A lot of rocks hidden under the water and the mud. Got 3 punches in this last section here. And we only had 2 spares. So we drove the last 40 on a flat wheel. But we're here. And we're putting new tyres on and we're going to go give it another bash, eh?
And that right there is the indomitable spirit of the off-road racer. Down, but certainly not out. For Shamir Varayawa, it was way too wet.
Yeah, look, the morning was quite nice, and then when it started to rain out in the mountains, it just got very, very wet. And in fact, now what's more showers, I think. I won't be surprised if a bakkie comes in first, because with the Sandmaster we just couldn't get traction. Battling the whole time, don't know where you're going. So conditions out there are tough, very tough.
And getting tougher with every extra drop. Gary Berthold even felt that it was dangerous.
Yeah, very treacherous, a lot of mud. It was dangerous driving. Great race out there. We were all having a good time together. Unfortunately, the main alternator and water pump belt jumped off, and we couldn't get it back on. You have to strip the whole car to get it in because it's a mid-mount. But very treacherous event, well marked. Unfortunate result for us.
Vehicle and asset finance from ABSA. Overcoming all obstacles. Finance from ABSA. Going the extra mile to get you financed.
Go! The last event of the 2006 ABSA Off-Road Championship, the Ford Carnival City 400 continues. And after the start of the second and final loop of 180 Ks, it was Evan Hutchison who piled on the speed, power and pressure and streaked ahead. The motorite man really had the bat singing along. For some, though, it was a bridge too far, as more than 50% of the field had already dropped out, and more were to follow. But not Bevan Berthold and Robin Houghton. They were up into 4th, all the way from 14th. Ford's Woolridge and Schulthammer were also doing a great drive, and they were up into 5th after going off in the 13th place. The Peter Maritzburg-based Ford outfit were looking for the win in the SP class and knew all they had to do to sew it up was finish, as their nearest rivals Grobler and Jordan and Voss and Pitchford had both been stricken with broken steering problems and were out, and they then took the lead very briefly as Berthold got stuck with a puncture. With Terence Marsh and Michael Whitehouse in a Nasher Mobile back taking second spot. Great driving, as they were 18th overall at the start of the day. Racing along, waiting for the impending next downpour, every team was just hoping to get to the hut in one piece. But the Nasher Mobile boys still had time to beep our faithful cameraman who braved the wet. Another team who were delighted with their race was the Tigerish John Moore and Ashley Thorne. This performance earned John a 5th place on the national points log. They were up into the top 8 all the way from 16th. The Duplessis and their Jimco were themselves having a stormer and were holding station after being 5th overnight. With the tough route exacting its toll, there was a high rate of attrition. There were 52 starters in the special vehicle category and only 9 made it to the finish line. That's less than 20%. As for the production car category, the statistic was slightly better, but then only slightly. There were 34 cars that lined up, but only 11 saw the finish line with engine and body intact and still going. It speaks volumes for the atrocious weather and its effects on the vehicles and their occupants. The Ford of Peckham and Huxtable was, as always, ultra reliable, and they were heading for a top 10 overall and yet another Class E win. But they were certainly nursing it along. For the Cries, it was a bittersweet race. In their first season, they were there or thereabouts all season long, but even though they were on their way to a win here, it wasn't good enough to take the Class B championship. In Class E, the Moffats had a fine event and were up into the top 10, and that's after they started 33rd. Meanwhile, the De Bruins were hunting down that second place on the championship log. Ever mindful of that, all they wanted to do was to finish. In Class S, a rather sick-sounding race car was not so Nasho mobile as Rutherford and Doubtfire tried to nurse her home. Then they tried take two. And almost inevitably, there was a take three coming. For the BB Auto Nissan team, there was joy as they cracked it into the top 7, and their 3.3-litre Nissan was still as eager as it was at the start. And here's that take 3 by Rutherford and Doubtfire Productions. Finally, but it wasn't exactly an Oscar-winning performance, was it? Nick Gosler and Richard Carolyn had their own problems. The Kopanang Hotel Super Team race car driver Gosler had already wrapped up the championship, but due to blurred vision, he handed the car to Carolyn to finish the last lap with, which he then promptly did with aplomb. For Warwick Goosen, there was a veiled reference to his weight, as his driver Ernest Corbett kicked him out so that their Century Properties bat could crest the hill. And not even that trick worked the first time. But don't take it personally, Warwick. Eureka. But everyone had troubles.
Problem seems to both back leaf springs is broken. I don't know, we've got plus minus 100 k's to go. I don't know whether we'll be able to fix it. We're going to try, but I doubt it.
Do you have something to tow with if I take
Yes, we do.
No, we've got plenty. Okay.
Okay, cool. All right, cheers. Cheers.
Off-road racing has some real gentlemen in it, but they're not gentle on the cars. The husband and wife team, George and Sharon Bonkeisen, were still basking in their first ever victory in Leidenburg in Class E, and here they're again impressed by taking 18th place overall and 4th in Class E. Some cars were so covered in mud, slush and muck that it was impossible to discern who they were. But we know our off-roading, so this was Harkus and Three who'd had a drama-filled last lap. They rolled their car and picked up 90 minutes of penalties for various transgressions, and they were eventually the last team to finish, but finish they did. And that meant that the silver and black stable from Motorite took an unprecedented top 3 on the championship log, because at the sharp end of the field, Evan Hutchison and Akim Bergman came home after 6 hours and 12 minutes worth of driving. That gave them a healthy 16-minute margin ahead of the next team, and all that lovely bubbly.
Let's hear what it was like. Yeah, this morning was very tricky. It was a bit muddy. We battled a bit in the morning, and as we tried to get some pace, as we got going, our fan belt pulley, the tensioner, broke off the motor. So we lost all our belts. We got out the car and we started working on the car. We must have been busy for 15 to 20 minutes trying to make a plan, wondering how we're going to come right. Fortunately, Achim, my mechanic, and the builder of the car, and for once, the technical ability that we have in the car came to fore, and we managed to make a plan with some longer bolts, and we thought, we'll see how long it'll last. We managed to get it together, but we were way off. I mean, we must have been down in 10th or 15th place. I don't know where we were. And I said to Mel, now the cards are down, now we're going to give it a full go. And we gave it a full go. That was really, really tricky. The heavens opened halfway near the end of the lap, and it was really difficult. By the time we came back into the pits, we had heard some news. Some of the guys were out, and some of the guys had penalties, so it gave us some additional hope. And we went out on this last lap and gave it our best, and we just slowly but surely we caught one after another. And obviously someone was looking after us because we wanted to bring it home. I've been looking for that second first place in the year, and this time round we got it.
It was a fantastic performance by the Motorite team, who have been doing some pioneering work on the off-road circuit in 2006. For the Toyota squad, there was good news as they awaited their first arrival. But they didn't have too long to wait, as the Castrol Toyota, Bevan Bertolt and Roman Houghton sped around the last corner and straight to take the production car win. And as is the custom, the champagne came out for them too. It was probably their toughest but finest moment of the 2006 season.
Look, it was hardcore. It was like a roof of Africa, very, very wet and muddy and slippery, and you had to just take it very easy. You could sliding everywhere. The guys stuck everywhere out there, and this four-wheel drive just keeps going. It's great, you know.
A good result to end off the year with?
Yeah, well, we finished now third in the championship, so we beat one of the works Nissans, which is great for us in the first year of racing. So it's Hannes, Kenny, then us, so it's great. I'm very happy about that.
Second in the specials and third overall, it was the consistent Terence Marsh and Michael Whitehouse in the Nasho Mobile Bat, and they were overjoyed with the performance that gave them fourth place on the log. Next, it was the Ford Ranger crew of Woolridge and Schulthammer, who with this performance clinched the SP Class national title, making their pit crew and supporters very happy indeed. A fine performance of consistency and durability for the Ford outfit, who should be a force to be reckoned with in the year 2007.
We came here with a point of winning our class in the SA Africa Championship, and we managed to do that. It wasn't without hassles because we had a good lead. I think we had about a 5-minute lead, and unfortunately we broke the rear prop shaft. I guess about 40 k's into this loop, so the last 140 k's we've done in front wheel drive only. So with all this rain, all this mud, it's been absolutely hectic. How this little engine managed to stay in one piece, I don't know. But yeah, it's been a fantastic year when I look back, and we've started 8 races, finished 8 races. I stand to be corrected, but I don't think anyone else has done that. So we've got a 100% finish rate, so we're very happy with it.
And for that, one should lift your cap to the Ford outfit, as most of the people did at the finish line. The BB Auto team took third in the production car class and won Class D by 39 minutes. And the Toyota victory gave the Japanese mark the Manufacturers Award too. Pickham and Huxtable brought the second Ford home in 4th place. In the specials, a comfortable victory for Hutchison and Bergman, who must have thought that they were down and out at one stage on the first lap. But the whole Motorrad team has a never-say-die attitude, and it came through. Gosler and Carolyn clinched the Class S Championship. After thousands of kilometers of racing around Southern Africa stretched over 8 races in the series, Krobler and Jordan are the kings again, while Schroeder and Huxtable took Class E with ease by 23 points. And in the Space Fan class, Cox and Tersteger had 19 points to spare over teammates Hutchison and Bergman, but it was an unprecedented top 3 for the Motorrad squad. And it was a welcome return to the top of the class for Toyota and the manufacturer's points log. Thanks for watching. Until next year, you keep it on the road, we'll keep it off-road.